In some circles, whenever you broach the topic of remakes, it's immediately a non starter. Not only am I asking you to get past that way of thinking, I want to shed light on what I think is the greatest horror remake ever made. Hey, what's up everybody? Nick here, and today I want to tell you guys a story. I want to take you on a journey to a young me and a movie that changed my life forever. And that movie is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003. Now, depending on when you were born and when you grew up and who you grew up around, we all have those movies that were just essential to our childhood. They are something that awoke something in us. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003 is that movie for me. I remember being 9 or 10 years old when this movie came out. And although I had been shown certain horror movies from my mom when I was growing up, a lot of them I either memory hold or they terrified me and I didn't revisit them. This was the first movie that I actually remember watching, being scared of, and wanting to go back to, while at the same time not wanting to go back to it. You know, those kind of memories, those kind of movies, TV shows, events, whatever they are. And do you remember the first one that genuinely terrified you, but you also couldn't help but want to go back to it as soon as possible to try to relive that again? See, this movie opened my eyes in a lot of ways. This was my introduction to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. To my knowledge, I hadn't seen any of the films up to that point. This was the first one that I saw. I remember wearing this DVD out with my friends Tommy and Chris. We would watch this movie all the time. I can't tell you what it was like to be watching the movie for the first time, and then even in subsequent viewings, and just seeing that opening. That looks like it's actually the police investigating this real-life crime scene. I was a sucker for that when I was a kid. Whether it was the Blair Witch Project, some of these spooky ghost stories based on a true story, that stuff really got me. When something was sold as real, before the age of the internet really, and before I was old enough to, peruse the internet, I took it as such. Why would they lie to me? This movie did that. I'll never forget that opening sequence and just thinking, how did they get this footage? How was this released? That blew me away, and it set the tone from the very beginning for me.
Tell me how much you got.
How much?
That much. That much?
This much.
And from that point forward, I was just totally engulfed in this film and everything it had to offer. Look, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of those remakes that it does stuff differently enough from the original that it really stands apart. It's not trying too hard to crib on the original. Sure, you have your main tenants, okay? You've got to have the family. You've got to have Leatherface. You've got to have the farmhouse out in Texas. You got to have the group of young adults that happen to stumble across this family, and havoc ensues. See, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003, I feel like adds a little bit more of a family dynamic here. You've got a great character in Sheriff Hoyt, which obviously we would find out he's not even the sheriff, but you could have guessed that. You see, this family does feel really sadistic and feels like they get off on what they're doing, and they probably do, but it also comes across as it's their way to survive. Their way of life is no longer sustainable, and everything around them is barren and empty. No one comes around these parts anymore. There's no business, no economy. It's kill or be killed. It's kill to eat, to survive. I also really like the dynamic here with the group of people that we follow in this movie. And the tone is set with them very early on too, with the hitchhiker. Again, another interesting play off of the original, but completely changing up the outcome. See, watching this the first time, if you had seen the original, I can imagine you'd be sitting there and you'd be going, okay, so she's going to be a part of the family. And then when she does what she does, you're immediately like, whoa, what the hell? Not to mention an incredible shot through a hole in a head that will live in my brain forever. And while this movie did some things differently and added some nice wrinkles to a classic story, it also paid homage in a lot of ways. Daniel Pearl returned as the cinematographer, and I'm telling you, I'm glad he did, because the movie looks amazing. You had John Larroquette back to do the voiceover, the narration at the beginning. That is so underrated. I hadn't seen the original when I first watched this movie, so I didn't even really realize that. I didn't pick up on that at first. Then having gone back and watched those movies as I got older, I was like, that is such a cool touch. Like I said, a lot of the basic themes here are still at play. You still got this family, you still got these kids, you've still got Leatherface. But I feel like it just enriched the lore a little bit. I got to know this family a little bit more. I got to care about my final girl in a way that I never cared about Sally. And that's not to say that Sally Hardesty wasn't a good character, because she is. I think Erin, played by Jessica Biel, just has a screen presence in this movie. She comes across as a badass. She's not this damsel in distress. She's going to fight. She's going to survive, come hell or high water. And I really, really dig that about her. I buy her as a fighter. There's multiple memorable scenes in this movie that will get under your skin and will stay with you for years to come. And I can speak to that because 20 years later, they're still under my skin, and I don't think they're ever going to leave my skin. One of those is the scene in the car when they're trying to get rid of the hitchhiker's body. And not only do you have them attempting to move this gross mess of a corpse that it makes me just cringe and squirm every time. Putting the gun barrel in the mouth, and you're just sitting here in tension and suspense, wondering if if this is going to go the way you're worried it's going to go. I remember watching that for the first time and being so uncomfortable and putting myself in that position. What would I do here? And you honestly don't know if you have a right answer. And if I were in that position, I probably would have done what he did because I didn't want to die. But the scene I think that stands out the most, that I'm going to remember forever, is when Leatherface looks up at Erin and he's wearing the face of Kemper. After he killed him and skinned him and wore his face and looked right at his girlfriend. It is so delightfully disgusting. Like, it is menacing, it's playful, but to him, it's just his nature. It's his way of life. But to the viewer and to Erin, you're living vicariously through her, and you're like, oh my God, what? We knew he was dead, we saw it happen, but just that. I'll never forget when Andy is being suspended by the hook, and he's got his toe just like slowly tapping on the piano, and it's sad, and it's melancholy, and it's just really, really like humanizing. It's a human moment for that character. There's so much about this movie that is just so good. There are things you don't expect, people that are involved that you didn't expect to be involved, characters that you really, really like, settings that are just gorgeous to the eye, great kills, truly freaky, unforgettable moments. It's got everything you could ever want. It tries to really break new ground here in a long-running franchise while also paying homage to the movies that came before it, especially the seminal classic that was the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Around this time, this is really when horror remakes would start to get in vogue. And I still, in my opinion, don't feel like any horror remake has reached the heights of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I know there's a lot out there that people love, myself included. Some that people would put at the very, very top. Maniac is one I think of. The Crazies. There's a lot like that. But as great as all of those movies are in their own ways, I just don't feel like any one of them could touch the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And maybe that's because of the nostalgia. Maybe that's because this movie is so near and dear to my heart, and it literally changed the trajectory of my life. It decided what my hobbies were going to be at 10 years old. I didn't have a choice in that. That is honestly really cool. And I feel like all of us, as we get older and we remember certain experiences like that, we look back so fondly on them. And for good reason.
Excuse me.
So I guess today I wanted to state my case for what I think is the greatest horror remake of all time. I think it's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And for reasons I already stated, I don't think that'll ever change. I also think it's important that we, at the same time, realize some of our biases and some of our nostalgia that plays a role in this. I can admit that when it comes to this film. But I can also say that it's been really cool over the years to see people praise this movie. I don't know how this got panned when it first came out by critics. I really don't. I think this movie is great, and I think a lot of them, if they went back and watched it, would find it's great. Maybe it's just because of the subject matter. It just wasn't what they wanted to see at the time. This would kick off a craze. You would see Platinum Dunes really leading that craze. You'd even see Marcus Nispel come back for Friday the 13th. But the difference is, with this movie, I feel like Nispel had a passion for what he was doing. He was paying reverence to what came before it. It was honoring that. It was loving. It felt like a tribute. It felt like a greatest hits in a good way from someone with knowledge of what came before. And I don't think he touched that at all with Friday the 13th. That seemed to me just like a job for him. And he kind of openly admitted that it just wasn't the same. He didn't really have the passion for that project like he did with this one. And I think it shows. So no matter what your favorite horror remake is, can we all just come together as a society for once and all agree the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is one of the best ones? But I want to hear down below what your favorite is and why. And if there's a reason behind that, if there's a memory attached to it, please share with me down below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please leave a like on it. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Follow me on all my social media. They're down below in the comments section. This is Nick. I thank you so much for stopping at the Lost River Drive-In, but I'm pulling out.